Welcome to the Sic'Em 365 Baseball Podcast with Levi Caraway. Presented by T&G Chemical and Supply. Let us be your one-stop shop for all of your business supplies at 3328 Franklin Avenue in Waco. Serving Central Texas since 1967.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Sic'Em 365 Baseball Podcast. I'm Levi Caraway. Thank you to Mark George and our sponsors at T&G Chemical for making this official. And today I'll kind of go over this past week where the Bears went 3-1 with a big win over UT and then 3 straight losses, 2 to Texas, 1 to UTSA last night on Tuesday, and then preview the Cincy series a little bit this weekend. And we'll also kind of go into some positives and negatives from this past week. So starting with Friday night, I mean, that was a huge win for Baylor. Coming off of that series win against Tech, you know, they were kind of starting to trend in the right direction. That was a huge momentum shift for the season. And that win against Texas on Friday night, 4-3 victory in 11 innings. Just a really good start from Mason Marriott. Texas had their ace on the mound, LeBaron Johnson, and he's a great pitcher. He's probably going to go in the first 2 rounds of the MLB draft this upcoming year. And then, you know, Patrick Hale, who's been really good this year, loaded the bases late in the game. Baylor was leading 3-2, I believe. And Ethan Calder came in, bases loaded, no outs, got out of the jam, only 1 run scored, and he went on to throw 4 scoreless innings, kind of get the win. And then in the 11th, Daniel Altman comes through with an RBI double, and he's been great this year. I mean, where would this team be without Daniel Altman? He's probably been Baylor's 4th or 5th best batter, and he wasn't even really projected to play that much this year. And so he's been kind of a godsend in a way. And then, you know, they get that huge win on Friday night. And then you kind of like, okay, maybe things are starting to kind of turn around. And then on Saturday and Sunday, that kind of quickly just fell to the wayside. Mason Green and Colin McKinney, both kind of struggled against a really talented Texas offense. And you know, this Texas team was like I said last week, was a lot more beatable than they have been in recent years, but they still have a really talented offense. Colin McKinney gave up 4 runs in the first inning. Mason Green gave up 5 runs in the first inning on Sunday. And then from that point, you're playing from behind. And this lineup, just with all the injuries they've sustained, is not capable of doing that. And then with Texas, they just rode their starters until they could. I mean, the guy on Saturday threw a complete game, over 125 pitches. He was really good, but they couldn't chase him out of the game. And you know, I was talking about this yesterday with some other people. Like, that goes to show you, like, Texas didn't really trust their bullpen. I mean, they're riding that guy for 125 pitches after he threw 7 innings last week, and yeah, I mean, you can't really do anything when that guy's just going out there and throwing 8, 9, 10 pitch innings time after time after time after time, and you can't draw walks, you can't do anything. Similar story on Sunday. Game ended up being an 11-1 run rule because Baylor gave up 5 runs in the bottom of the 8th. That game was, I mean, aside from the first inning, it was a pretty back and forth. I mean, not back and forth, but it was a pretty close game. Aside from that 5 spot, Mason Green only pitched an inning, but Kobe Andrade was really good out of the bullpen. Drew Leach was really good out of the bullpen. Sepulveda struggled at the end. And, yeah, I mean, right when you think things are kind of headed in the right direction, that happens again. And then you come home, and I mentioned this on the boards and on the game thread, but, you know, over these next 3 weeks, Baylor has a really good chance. I'm not going to say they're going over 500. I'm not going to say they're going to, you know, get close to that. I'm just saying the schedule over the next couple of weeks is, you know, relatively, it lightens up a bit. I mean, UTSA, Cincy, Houston Christian, UIW, BYU, there's a UTA, there's a good game against EBU thrown in there, and obviously they're really good. But, you know, the rest of those games are all very winnable. And starting last night with UTSA coming to town, who's, you know, traditionally, you know, they've been pretty good in the last few seasons under Pat Hallmark. He's a really good coach. But they just came off a series win against number 10 East Carolina, so they were playing some good baseball, and Baylor had a big opportunity here, and they led for most of the night. They put up a 5 spot in the second, and then, like I said, they were kind of going. It was a game they should have won. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, it was 7-6 going into the 7th inning. Baylor was 7-0 after leading after the 6th this year, and Grant Gollum, senior kind of veteran guy, just struggled, give up 3 runs in that 7th inning to the Roadrunners, and they ended up pulling away with the 9-7 victory. And Tanner Duke started that game for Baylor. He struggled this season in his last 3 midweek starts. He's given up at least 3 earned runs. And these midweek games, man, Baylor's just struggling to win these games. And, you know, in the past, like, these are these are games you got to win when, you don't have the most talent, when you don't have the most depth. Like, when you go into these Big 12 series kind of undermanned in a way, you got to take advantage of these midweek games, and especially games where you're in a position to win them kind of going down to the wire. And it was a demoralizing loss. I mean, in the past 2 years, a loss like this has kind of been routine where the bullpen just chokes a late lead, but the bullpen's been pretty good for this season. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a really big opportunity this weekend against Cincy. I mean, Cincy's beatable. They're not they're not great. They're not bad. I mean, they have a first-year head coach, Jordan Bichelle from Central Michigan, who I really liked. I mean, Central Michigan came into Waco last year, won a series, and I was really impressed by him. And I think he's going to get that program turned around in the right direction. I don't know how long that's going to take, but I'm sure they're going to be competitive. They're going to be feisty this upcoming weekend. And yeah, I mean, so many times this season, Baylor's had a good weekend and they've had a demoralizing kind of midweek loss. And then you go into that weekend series where you're like, this could go off the rails. It could be, a final stand in a way. Like, they kind of set their foot down, get back on the right track. And I don't know. I mean, this time I don't want to say this time feels different, but this feels like a very, very important weekend for Baylor because, like I said, I mean, things could go farther downhill or they could, trend in the right direction because you have 3 weeks of pretty, winnable baseball coming up. So I'll get into some positives and negatives in a second. And first, we'll take a sponsor break from our sponsors with T&G Chemical.
T&G can, and here's why.
I gotta say, running a small business can be tough. As a professional, keeping my place clean for employees and customers can feel like a full-time job. That's why I trust the pros at T&G Chemical and Supply for all my supplies. And now my business stays clean. And I'm surprised how much less I'm spending each month on cleaning and maintenance. Now I can even save on products from T&G Chemical for my home. T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why.
T&G Chemical and Supply. That's why.
Welcome back, everybody. Let's start with some positives from this past week. And there weren't too many, but I will say that the bullpen has been a really nice surprise this year. I thought going into the season that the young pitching was kind of going to determine the ceiling of this team. Obviously, with the injuries in the lineup, that's kind of had to readjust, your viewpoint of this team. But regardless, I mean, the bullpen's been really good. Ethan Calder, Patrick Hale continue to be just really, really solid guys out of the pen. Kobe Andrade and Drew Leach, both of those guys were kind of on the bubble to make the team going into the spring, and they've been really nice additions. Steven Sepulveda had a rough game over the weekend, but he's been good. RJ Ruwe, another freshman, he's been good. So yeah, I mean, like, those guys have all been performing pretty well, and I think that's something that I didn't necessarily anticipate this year. So that's a positive. I mean, another one would be Caleb Bergman came back last night. He's missed the last 3 weeks with a hamstring injury, and with him being out, it's really kind of, I mean, they just don't have the depth and they don't have the pieces to kind of withstand all these injuries. And so getting him back is huge. He's always going to be a competitive bat in the bottom of the lineup. He went 1 for 4 yesterday with a double. He played a nice game, had a great play in left field. And then from the negatives, I would say just the injuries. The injuries are just piling up. I mean, I didn't mention this in the recap, but on Friday against Texas, Will Pendergrass left the game. He was chasing down a pop fly and kind of down the first base line, ran into the wall awkwardly and was kind of walking off the field holding his shoulder and has kind of been in a sling the past few days. I'm not really anticipating good news there. You went and saw the doctor on Monday, but I don't really have any word on that. Jackson Elizondo, freshman pitcher, got hurt last week against Sam Houston. Not really expecting good news there either. Kind of walked off the field holding his elbow. So when you look at it, I mean, those are 2 guys. You had Hunter Simmons, Gavin Brzezowski, Jack Little, John Ewens, who were hurt pretty much for the year, pretty much within the first week of the season. That's 6 guys who are probably going to be out for the year. Cole Posey's been battling injuries. Bergman's been battling injuries. He's back, thankfully. And then on the mound, you have Jaron Matheson, Gabe Craig, and Sam Crane, who are all kind of going to be midweek guys. That's another thing. I mean, when you see these midweek scores, like Baylor's already thin to begin with, and then you have 3 guys who normally pitch on Tuesdays that are out. And so that kind of even stretches things thinner even more. And so those 3 guys probably should be back eventually, kind of dealing with some minor stuff. But still, I mean, that's a quarter of your roster that is gone. I mean, you have 41 guys, and that's about 10 of them who can't play right now. And I mean, this program just isn't in a place where it can withstand stuff like that. And so it's unfortunate. I mean, it kind of is what it is, but like, you're constantly kind of have to readjusting the bar of what this team can be. And not that they were ever going to be great or anything, but, you can't, it's going to be tough to continually win games when you're down so many key pieces and whatnot. And so, like I said, it'll be an interesting stretch over these next couple of weeks because there are very winnable games on the schedule. BYU, Cincinnati should not be better than Baylor, but I mean, who knows? We'll find out this weekend with Cincy. And like I said, they're a scrappy team. I really like their head coach. They're 15-11. They have a lot of veterans in their lineup. I mean, their pitching staff, when you look on paper, their starters, their Friday guys, 11.9 ERA. Their Saturday guys, a 6.2 ERA. Their Sunday guys, a 5 ERA. So I mean, Baylor's going to have its opportunities this weekend to get back on track. I mean, another thing I forgot to mention is with the negatives is just the lineup is just, and I mean, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but when you're missing so many guys with injuries and you're having to play a bunch of guys who aren't really expected to contribute much, and lineup just isn't good, and it can't afford to be in games where it's a shootout with the other team. I mean, they're just not going to win games where they're going to have to put up 8, 9, 10, 11 runs because it's just more than likely not going to happen, barring playing an opponent with a really bad pitching staff. And most of the guys against UTSA last night, save for their last two, had 10+ ERAs. And I mean, shoot, outside of that 5 spot in the second from Baylor, I mean, they really didn't get that much going, and they only had 2 hits over the final 5 innings. So and that's really becoming a reoccurring theme. It's just not that many guys in this lineup are really, forcing quality at bats. Not a lot of guys are drawing walks. Not a lot of guys are seeing a ton of pitches at the plate. I will say one guy who I've been impressed with is Wesley Jordan. He's had a really good last couple of weeks. He's second on the team now in batting average, which is hard to fathom after, the horrible start he had to the year. And he's gotten base in 16 straight games, which is a team high. So, I mean, shout out to him. He's playing good. He's playing well right now. Enzo Apodaca continues to play some good baseball. He's kind of had some bad luck these last few games with hitting balls really hard. They've just gone right to guys. Plansky's kind of up and down. Ty Johnson's had good moments, but he's kind of up and down. Mason Greer is struggling. And so Altman's been good in the bottom of the lineup. But, I mean, you're not getting a ton from the catching position. You aren't getting a ton from second base. You're not getting a ton from first base. It's just, it's tough to see where the hits are going to come from. This lineup, I don't want to say they're worse than last year, but, I mean, I feel like last year they were a little more scrappier, probably could draw some more walks and whatnot. That just hasn't been the case this year. So, anyway, I mean, this weekend against Cincy is going to be really, really, really big. And, I mean, I know you can probably roll your eyes when I say it's going to be big because, I mean, this team is, 8-16 now. How can a series be big? And I mean that in the sense that, this is a home series against a team, against a conference opponent that they should beat, going into these next few weeks with a lighter schedule. And so this could either, kind of push them forward, or it could just bring it farther downhill. And so, it'll be interesting. We'll see. And so I'll talk to you guys next week, and hope you all have a good Easter. And just a reminder that since Easter's on Sunday, the series starts on Thursday. So that's why I'm doing this on Wednesday. And yeah, if you're not a premium member on Sic'Em 365, subscribe, because we have game threads for every baseball game. I do a lot of feature stories, do a lot of different articles and weekly recaps and whatnot. And so I'll talk to you guys next week. I appreciate it. And it'll be a good weekend. We'll find out which team comes to play. And so I'll see you guys next week.
TNG can, and here's why.
To say my wife and I have a lot to clean is an understatement. So we go to TNG Chemical, where the pros know what cleaning solutions to use and give us detailed instructions on exactly how to use them. We never got that kind of advice from any other stores. And the prices at TNG are great. From general household cleaners to odor control solutions for our pets. We go to TNG Chemical and Supply. That's why.
TNG can.